I didn't think the pain from the shingles rash would affect simple, everyday tasks like bathing, getting dressed, or even walking around. I was wrong. Though not everyone at risk will develop it, 99% of people over the age of 50 already have the virus that causes shingles, and it could reactivate at any time. I developed it, and the blistering rash lasted for weeks. Don't learn the hard way, like I did. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, sisters. I'm Tom. I feel like I referenced the Block Party song title, so here we are again, a lot in my intros. And so it proves once more, as we return a couple of days after a pod, 48 hours ago, to discuss yet more FPL, and what seems ludicrously early to be saying is our penultimate pod of preseason. This is purely because of a poorly timed family holiday next week to somewhere with internet probably not good enough for me to record nowadays. The days of shouting "Duffy" in a random holiday house in Portugal, that's a nugget for long-term listeners, are now long over. And I'm joined as always by Sam. All good, mate? Tinkering away still?
Yeah, of course. You can't not at this time of the season, can you? Obviously, we're well informed now. We've had 2 pods in a week, so we're in record numbers, uncharted territory. Who knows? We might even run out of things to say eventually. But today, we're actually going to take a look at our teams rather than just all the tiddlers that we did on Tuesday. Of course, if you haven't caught up with that, do go check it out. We've done a pod on the premiums, a pod on the cheaper picks, and now we're going to pile it all together and try and figure out what our drafts are. But yeah, all good, really. We are, as always, Who Got the Assist. A special welcome at this time of the season to anybody new listening or watching along on YouTube. And of course, returning viewers and listeners, we really appreciate you coming back for another season, for season 10, in fact, of WGTA. On today's agenda, we'll be revealing our current drafts to each other. Think we could probably both guess the majority of them, given the amount that we talk offline, but we're probably going to have a surprise or two in there. And of course, we're going to have a general discussion about those and how they're shaping up. Then a wider discussion on our thinking when it comes to the chip strategy for the first half of the season, where we're currently landing, what other factors might help us to change our mind or lock in further, and maybe some alternative paths worth considering. And then, of course, we're going to be unveiling our succinct, boiled down 6 simple rules to have a decent FPL season. No guarantees of a great one, unfortunately, but that's all down to you at the end of the day, with assistance from us, of course. So it's Thursday, the 6th of August. 2 weeks tomorrow until game week 1. Overnight, Norgard signed for Everton. And by the time we get back, probably a lot more will have happened. And any pod listeners, I think this is probably going out on the Tuesday, right, Tom? So it's already going to be dated in the past.
I think it's just going to be out today because
there we go.
Yeah, because otherwise we're going to say something in our our squads and then immediately gets dated over the weekend. You know, obviously, God forbid, some terrible injury or something, and everything changes, and this looks really out of date. So it'll be there. Hopefully, it will last a bit longer. But hey, there we go.
There we go. Exactly. So I think Thursday is one of the only dates we rarely ever do. So we're really completing the set early this season, getting all the Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays in. Now Thursday as well. But in the meantime, is it worth starting off with our drafts so far?
Yeah, that's the Trafford to Leeds as well. John Trafford has gone.
Yes, John Trafford,
John
the
Stones,
mysterious 5-tweet Fabrizio Romano. Yeah.
Oh dear me,
God.
Guy's really frazzled, isn't he? Anyway, enough about that. Sorry, I'm literally just taking your draft in.
Yeah, this could be a 5-minute no talking
moment.
Section. For the audio, I'll list mine. You can list yours, and we can kind of cross-reference, I suppose. So starting off, first of all, I should mention I'm currently bench boost 1. I can see that you are too. Lammon's in goal for me alongside Verbruggen. Mascara, O'Reilly, which I'm sure we'll be talking about. Maguire, Ayer, and O'Shea make up the 5 in defence. Midfield is Bruno, Szoboszlai, Gross, Ndai, and Sangare. That is the Brentford Sangare, which we'll come on to. And then up front, we've got the same 3. Haaland, João Pedro, and Calvert-Lewin for now. Tom, how about yours?
Oh, I'm really surprised because I genuinely thought that you'd have a lot more in common with me. But as it stands, there's only 8 in common, which is quite interesting. So I've got Verbruggen as well, but I've taken the 0.5 from the keeper as discussed on the pricing pod, shoved it into elsewhere. So I've got Kinski as the backup keeper. You've got Mascara. I've got Calafiori. I think that will be very, very strongly informed by the Community Shield. I've got Gvardiol, Shaw, O'Reilly, so a bit of a save in there, alongside Shaw for your Maguire. And I've got Ballard as my big man at the back, whereas you've got Ayer, I think, in that slot. And I've also got Darragh O'Shea. And I'm fighting the urge to say John O'Shea every time I see his name, just because of the long-term sort of instinct in my brain. But I'll fight the reflex. We've got Szoboszlai in common. We've got Bruno Fernandes in common. We've got Gross in common. I've got Brian and Bumo. I do still think that the double United attack is probably worth going with at the start of the year, but that is to be decided. You've got Ndai. I've got the other Sangare, the Nottingham Forest one, and up front is the exact same 3. And I think that 3, in common with what we've discussed on both the pricing pods we've done recently, Sam, just look pretty locked for me. I've just, Holland and João Pedro, they haven't left any draft that I've made. And Calvert-Lewin, I think when the prices came out, that was one we've noticed as being quite good. In Talisman Theory, I expanded a little bit on Calvert-Lewin, and I just can't get over that price, really, the more I think about it. I think we were saying earlier on today, weren't we, that if he'd have been priced at 7 million, maybe even 7.5, we'd have probably not thought he was overpriced. So for him to be in 6 does, on reflection, really, really flip and stand out almost as much as Szoboszlai, which is quite wild when you think about it. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a player who was the butt of so many jokes for many, many years, now a player that we've done a full 180 on and completely embrace. Remember, you were writing something, saying that you had Calvert-Lewin on this very show, and someone in the comments was saying, please don't endorse Calvert-Lewin, you'll make your show into a laughing stock. We didn't need to endorse Calvert-Lewin to do that, but still, it's amazing, isn't it, how quickly that remontada has come about for the lead striker.
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, he underperforms every season. There's data to prove it. But if he gets enough of the chances, he still gets enough of the points. So, look, I think 6 million is because FPL managers generally don't think much of him. So they've set him at a price where it at least gives us a decision. If he was in at 7.5, I think his ownership would be about 1%. Even if it was still arguably good value, everyone would just overlook him because they've got horrific memories with him. But at 6, it makes it a discussion. And dare I say, the standout 6 million pick, especially if you are bench boosting early, either game week 1 or 2, it works pretty well. So yeah, he's in for me. It seems like underpriced fairly significantly, and I'm going to take a piece of that. I don't think, unless I change my chip strategy, I'm going to change my forwards. There's a very minimal chance that Thiago comes in, but it's such a small chance, it's almost negligible. Yeah, I think it will be these 3, unless I completely alter my strategy and then maybe don't look at bench boosting until after our wild card, at which point I'd just bin the Calvert-Lewin spot to a 4.5. But I think the odds of that happening are pretty slim right now as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that even though we don't have that, we have kind of just over half our squad, well, obviously just over half, so it's 15 players, but I do think they're kind of almost variations on a theme in a lot of ways. And I mean, I said on the pod on Tuesday that my squad is as beige as a naughty's living room, and we'll talk about that in the simple rules. But to be honest, I'm more than fine with it. I haven't made a change on it for a little while, and I don't know, man, I just feel like the secret to FPL sometimes, actually maybe I'm breaking into what we'll talk about later a little bit, is not to kind of over consume and get in your own head, you take whatever content you see, you hear, you read as the basis for your thinking, and then try to kind of outthink it. And I noticed the other day, for example, that people were denigrating Pascal Gross, and someone was saying, "Oh, everyone owns him now," and at the time of
Under
recording, it's less than
10%.
10%.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, it's amazing how the outside impact a lot of the conversations sort of have. I suppose just to kind of talk around it a bit more, the team that I've put together, and I think that this kind of is true of yours as well, and obviously I will see what you think, accomplishes two things. One is to give me a solid team with a little bit of depth to navigate to that monster international break, and maybe even beyond if I want to. And there's lots of kind of what I term long-term holds in here, and lots of kind of price points like the Bumo one that are occupied so I can make other moves later on. And in quite a Ron Seal way, as the second thing it does, is it gets rid of bench boost in week 1, where my target is just very low. Like, my bench is Kinski, Gross, Sangare, and O'Shea. I'm not expecting the world, and I think people do overvalue the bench boost chip a little bit. But I think that that's a lot about the second half, and you've got the availability heuristic of these massive bench boosts, and you see people in the first half of the season getting off like massive 30-point bench boosts on social media quite a lot. But the reality is, normally the expectation is probably going to be about, well, it's going to be 8. But if I was offered 12 points my bench boost right now, Gameweek 1, I'd snap your hand off. I think that'd
I'd
be
shake your hand at
amazing.
that. Yeah.
I think that'd be absolutely amazing. I'd be very, very happy with that, and it just means I'm happy to go on to that international break, and that's kind of what this is. And yes, there's going to be some allowances made for that. So obviously you've got to spend the extra on the goalkeeper, so that 0.5 is taken out. There's less quality somewhere else potentially. It was quite helpful because we both kind of were waxing lyrical about Gross. That's why he's such a good pick. That's why he's at such good value at 5.5, because really I think he's probably 0.5 underpriced, and it's good to kind of have that to fill the role. It's just mentioned in the chat that DCL is kind of a good pick because there are other players who are quite highly priced, mainly the big three. No Gabriel, so Haaland and Bruno, having 6 million for a striker. If they'd have priced DCL a bit higher, then we would be scrabbling around with, Brobby, making the case for Igor Jesus and stuff like that. But with DCL, the more I thought about it since Tuesday, the more standout he is. And I wrote a piece on it for Tasman Theory. It's just insane. So, yeah, I think that both drafts do accomplish that, and it's just kind of, maybe it's not quite fiddling around the edge pieces, because you do have O'Reilly, for example, which I am quite envious of. But I also like the way that my team has kind of taken that million and has distributed it elsewhere. So it's variations on the theme. It's not as beige as I thought it would be. I did genuinely think you'd unveil your team. It would be like literally 13, 14 similar. So I'm quite glad to see some variety here. Yeah, talk me through kind of a few differences here. So last time I saw your team, you had the 2 8 millions, you had the double, you had double nice midfield. You've now gone back to attack and sort of not gone back to defense, sorry, and you've invested the extra +5 in 0.5 in Lamens. I mean, what's the thinking behind that one?
I think I only had 1 8 million in the midfield, so it was just in Burmo. But yeah, so what I've effectively done is decided I do want a bench boost early. So I've figured out that I needed to probably downgrade someone and spread it around a little bit. And then a secondary decision I came to was, I think the majority of FPL managers right now are assuming O'Reilly or like a 6.5 million defender isn't going to be a factor come game week 1. I would prefer to work on the assumption that it will be a factor. And then if in the Community Shield he plays, I don't have to panic and mess around my draft that I've had in my FPL app for a week and a half, 2 weeks, thinking, oh God, I need to find a way to afford O'Reilly. Because I still think there are a pretty decent chance of him playing in that game. And if he doesn't, then fantastic. I can downgrade him by 1 million at least to Gvardiol, maybe even cheaper if I wanted to Ballard, for instance. And then I can move that across to midfield. I can upgrade and die. I can maybe spread that across my defense a little bit more. But I came to the conclusion that I would feel more comfortable psychologically downgrading from O'Reilly once I see him not starting the Community Shield, rather than oh God, he's played. My draft can't accommodate a 6.5 million defender, but I really, really bloody want him because he puts up 0.2 XG per 90. So that's the way I've gone with it. And I also do want a Man City defender as well. It's worth noting, especially one with that much attacking upside. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to build from the three Maresca's core pillars thing. So I'm going to go Haaland, Bruno, O'Reilly as a bit of a 6.5 placeholder. And then I'm going to work backwards from that. And then, you know, if O'Reilly isn't fine in the Community Shield, then great. I've got an extra million to spend elsewhere. That becomes Gvardiol probably. And then I've got a bonus 1 million to spend wherever I like. Possibly Ndai is someone who ends up going before game week 1, or there's significant rumors, and then that spot gets upgraded. Who knows? Maybe to Foden. I doubt it. Probably more likely to Anderson. Maybe to Lefay.
Yeah, there's only one choice for you, isn't there?
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's not gonna be Foden. I don't know why I'm teasing you all. But yeah, I mean, let's say Foden scores a hat trick, it becomes much more tempting. Yeah. So, but basically, that's the logic I've applied. It's not that I don't want Mbermo or Cunha, or Wirtz even is another player that is interesting in the midfield. Rodgers to an extent. There's quite a lot of players at that price point that I like. But when I break each one down, I'm like, yeah, but like Mbermo might only get 60 minutes. Carrick has done that a fair few times. Same with Cunha. They've got competitors in their positions. Wirtz maybe, but I've already got Szoboszlai. Like that's a big maybe. And then who is the other one? I can't even remember. Rodgers as well. There's doubts over game week 1. I don't really want to double up on Chelsea unless I'm unless I'm free hitting in game week 3 even. So yeah, this is where I'm at right now. We can talk about the bench in a bit, but yeah, I feel like I've hammered on for 5 minutes, so I'm free to scrutiny.
No, I totally get it. I think the only thing for me that, and yeah, I appreciate that you're just kind of looking for the floor for game weeks 1 and 2 of United specifically. I suppose for me, like the first instinct, something that I've really struggled to overcome. I mean, I've definitely looked at removing Bumo and making those upgrades as you sort of said. I'm not really too enthusiastic about any of the 6s. In fact, I know it sounds a bit funny, but I'd probably be looking to go with Gross and Sangare, freeing up a hell of an F ton of money effectively, and maybe even banking 0.5 to start the season if I went that way. I don't like Ndai at all. I just think he's on penalties, but I think he's kind of an analytics dream, but a real FPL kind of all fart no poo merchant effectively. Obviously everyone's free to disagree with that. That's just my opinion on him.
I do disagree, but okay.
I prefer to go down to Sangare, frankly. I just don't know. I just like doubling up on nice attack 1 and 2. Probably gets to 3, and I suspect he goes to Rodgers, or maybe Bruno goes to Palmer for 4 for Chelsea or versus Hull. I don't know. I think that it's definitely something that I've thought about, but I just like how it is at the moment. It's all kind of, they're all sort of quite close, really, if that makes sense. Like I think that really there are a few players that I'd like to fit in. So for example, I kind of wish I could fit in Tarko just for that sort of long-term longevity, I suppose. I wouldn't mind Braithwaite either. I think he'll be good for DEFCON. I think I looked at it earlier on, for 24-25, he was just under 10 DEFCON per start, and the same again last year, and the scant starts he got. At 5.5, he could be good value as well, but not quite got the room at the end at the moment. And I've got that 5.0 in Ballard, which I haven't seen in that many teams. I just really like the first 2 games, the DEFCON, the goal threat. And the only game I really kind of want to hide him in was the game in game week 4, which is the Man City game. But I mean, game week 5 is Man City, isn't it? It's us in game week 4. Like, for game week 4 for Arsenal at home, I really don't mind that. I mean, I think Sunderland walk into a decent run of fixtures for between 6 and 9, if I'm correctly, after international break. So one that, I just like the look of, mainly because he's an absolute flipping unit, but also just because the first 2 are pretty good. If you're looking for Spike, a 17-pointer, but yeah, I mean, it does feel a lot like if we're kind of doing rate my draft, a lot of it is kind of I'm just basically saying by my team, and you're just saying you're not, and you'd be more like, well, actually, I prefer my team, which is absolutely fine. But I can see exactly where you're coming from, effectively.
Yeah, no disagreements here. I think looking at yours, I prefer the firepower of Mbermo over what I've got in my midfield. But equally, I've got an extra penalty taker in there, and I've saved 2 million, so that's been reinvested in Maguire over Shaw. And the more I think about Shaw, the less sure I am about him. Haha. I just think he provides so little other than just the clean sheets, and they're clearly looking for a left back. It scared me off a little bit. Maguire, yeah, he's kind of like a Ballard light. I don't expect the same sort of numbers, but he's got better clean sheet odds and a bit of goal threat. So I'm happy enough with that. Ayer's the risk, but we should know by the deadline whether Van den Berg is actually indeed out or not. If he is, then I think he's the best 4.5 by quite a distance as well. And then at the moment, the biggest risk I can see in my team is my version of Sangare. But he's already getting minutes at Brentford. He played in a behind closed doors friendly. I think he got 45 minutes in it. So he should be fit to start the season. It's just whether or not I think he's completely safe. So that, yeah, I think at the moment, my draft looks maybe a little bit different to how it might end up, because 2 million or at least 1 million is being spent on O'Reilly, just because I want my draft in place in case O'Reilly becomes a pick before game week 1, and then I don't have to panic. Whereas I think the other universe where he's not a pick is save 1 million there, and then straight away Ndiaye can be at least a 6.5, maybe a 7, and then I've only got to get another 1 million out of somewhere, maybe downgrading Lamons, maybe downgrading Maguire, whatever, or maybe downgrading Sangare to the other Sangare or to Norgard, and then all of a sudden Ndiaye is Mbermo or Cunha or Verts, and so all of a sudden our drafts actually look almost identical at that point, and it's all really collapsing around the O'Reilly thing for me versus the Mbermo thing for you, and it's just where would you prefer to spend that extra couple of million? But I'd like to work on the assumption that O'Reilly is ready, and then when he's not, it's fine. I know what I'd shift across to.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of like, is O'Reilly at the start of the year worth the extra million over Guardiola?
I think so.
Last week in terms of Gabriel versus Calafiore or Mascara, effectively, it's a very similar sort of question. I suppose we will be looking at, the Community Shield will be the main signpost. I think it's that one and the Brighton Conference League qualifier, which will be the key sort of like real serious games over the next couple of weeks that will kind of help us to really decide what we're doing. Take it back to Shaw quickly. I'm fully aware of all the context. We mentioned it yesterday, and I'm not suggesting that you don't think that I'm not aware, but just by the way.
No, you're very well plugged in. I know.
But I mean, he's literally there for this first Lewis Hall to United. That's been mentioned a few times. I mean, if that does happen, it will happen. I imagine it will happen quite late. I can't imagine either team moving quickly with that one. Newcastle probably don't want to sell. This could be dated so horribly. This is why, again, I want to post it tonight rather than on Tuesday. This could, I think that will happen quite late if it does happen. So I think Shaw will at least get Hull, probably get Ipswich, and after that, I can probably handle it if he doesn't start for the game week 3. And it kind of covers me for the clean those good clean sheet odds you offered. I am under no illusions that he offers nothing going forward. He's literally there as a 6 or a 2. That's literally it, I think, as it stands. But at 4.5 at the start of the season, it's fine. And I think that links to a wider point that we spoke about on Tuesday, which is that a lot of this setup is kind of narrowly focused on quite a short-term block of fixtures. It's those first 5. That's all I actually seen. That's all I've actually looked at really in terms of this team, and where it goes to, which we'll talk about in the chip chat in a bit. But if I was kind of not thinking of bench boost 1, and if I was kind of maybe trying to build a team a few years ago when it didn't kind of feel like a wild card early suited it because of those contextual reasons, and we didn't have the second chip. The second set of chips. Maybe this would be set up a little bit differently. Like you would have, as you kind of inferred earlier, a bit more consideration to a 3-5-2 perhaps, or maybe a 4-4-2 in today's FPL with a bigger hitting defender, and Calvert Lewin being a 4.5 burner sat at the third bench. I think it's very sort of contextual surrounding this year, all the uncertainty. I don't think we've ever had a managerial turnover quite like it over the last few months. And I think what's notable about these teams is that they're either populated with players from where there is, Man United is the seventh longest serving manager, Michael Carrick. Farke is the third longest serving manager at Leeds. Or they're predicated on players that we are fairly confident are going to play quite a central role in their teams. I mean, my Sangare and your Sangare are probably the two where there's question marks over them. I don't think my Sangare is back actually from, or reported back to duty for Nottingham Forest, and it might be that he ends up going out, and you end up with checks notes Florentino Luis, Norgard. I may end up with Diego Gomez and doubling up on Brighton. You never know. I think that's kind of the main sort of spot to move to our benches quickly that I'm kind of not entirely sure on. Like, I am sure on Gross, and you've got Gross as well. I think I want the 5.0 because I prefer that to a 4.5 million mid. So I said on Tuesday, I think that's completely untenable at the moment, barring like some new development. And then Dara O'Shea, whatever. A decent Defcon record at Burnley as well. I'm hanging my hat on there.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously there are things that will change in the next week or two. Norgard, if he gets minutes preseason, might end up being the 5 million sexy pick in midfield. If Sangare is a bit of a risk. I might want to shave 0.5 off of my Sangare and get Sangare light at 5 million instead of 5.5. And then also another potentially interesting development could be around the Ipswich goalkeeper, because Palmer's the one getting minutes at the moment, and I think they've got keepers back, but he's started the preseason friendly so far and he's 4 million. So just watch out. I still am reluctant to suggest it because I don't think he will be the starter, but it's not impossible, and that might open up a few things. So yeah, just keep an eye on that, I guess. Defend.
The Dutch bloke.
Yeah, I don't think he's played yet.
Okay.
I think that So it's just one to monitor. I don't have him down as the starter. I know they've signed, but he's still been the one getting the minutes in preseason. So unless they want to throw in a keeper who's never played for them, even in a preseason friendly, he better start getting some minutes soon. So let's wait and see on it. But yeah, I think that's, like, again, very unlikely, but worth just keeping an eye on. Our forward lines look pretty much set, barring something weird happening. I think at least I'd say 3 of our midfielders. I'd be surprised if either of us change. And then it's a couple of midfielders, couple of defenders, and then it's generally the same sort of coverage of teams, but like maybe different picks within those teams. So my Mosquera takes on your Calafiori. Those could swap by the deadline. If Calafiori has a good community shield, then I might be tempted, or vice versa. O'Reilly could easily be Gvardiol. Maguire might end up being short. Like, they're all good picks as far as I'm concerned. No one in your team that I'm looking at and scoffing and being like, no way. I'm thinking, if I was in a specific structure, I would. But I think the main thing that we have in common at the moment is our attitude to bench boosting. And I think that's generally shaping our first few weeks. And looking at your team at the moment, I'm assuming you're looking at holding off on the wild card for a little longer than just game week 4. Would I be right in assuming that?
Yeah.
I
probably will leave it till the international break, but I will see what the deal is with that. I'm not entirely sure whether I will use it earlier than that. I don't think so, though. I really don't think so as it stands. So you're not planning to go any earlier. Let's move to the chip chat then. Are you planning on going any earlier than that? Like, I think that And we'll talk about free hit in a minute. For wildcard, I think it's looking at international break 1. I think that's kind of how I've set up to kind of manage.
Yeah, I'm the same now, to be fair. The more I've thought about it, the more I like the international break for an opportunity. And it also gives you enough weeks to collect a bit of information and some free transfers as well. So all of that together, I do like the international break as an opportunity. Game week 4 is the other that I wouldn't mind, sort of, if I'm like panicking and things are getting out of control and I'm off to a really bad start and picks that I thought were terrible have ended up being amazing, then I might look at bringing it forward to 4. But I think 6 is probably the window I like. Even on a wild card in 6, though, 5 or 6 of the picks in my team today likely would stay just because they're like fairly consistent and reliable no matter what the fixtures are. So there's an outside chance that even beyond 6, it could have the stamina to go a bit further if all of my picks are, you know, all firing off. I don't want to just wild card out of a good, like, well-performing team. So yeah, I think 6 is most likely for me. Bench boost game week 1 versus 2. Have you been giving any thought to 2, or is it solely 1 now? And if so, why?
I've looked at bench boost too, but I feel, and it's not necessarily true, like, you know, if your plans go that way, you may have a different approach. That it sort of it's a bit predeterministic. Like, it locks me into needing to use a wild card or a free hit in game week 4 as necessity with the players that I like, which I don't like, because I think that you end up probably with 2 or 3 Sunderland, but probably 2. But by game week 4, you've got Arsenal at home. Game week 5, Man City away. You end up with the Manchester derby, probably being. You end up with kind of 3, maybe 4 players in that. You end up kind of hanging your hat on the Coventry, like Coventry players keeping a clean sheet and all them scoring lots of goals or something like that. We saw, and we spoke about it a couple of last week, no, on Tuesday, that their XGC or an XGA in the championship wasn't exactly kind of huge. So it kind of feels there's a few more buts. The bench boost on 1, let's face it, on paper is not showy. It's not flashy at all. There's nothing sexy about bench boosting with, in my case, Kinski, Gross, De Forest, Sangare, and O'Shea. There's nothing sexy about that. It probably does look better to the eye to be sat there with Haji Wright, Rushworth, Thomas, and then whatever the other midfielder you've got. That looks a lot better.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that team has as much longevity. Like, if there is the dream scenario, right, where I start strongly, have made all the right calls, which never happens, let's be fair. I think it's happened once to me on WGTA, but that was Lucy season. I don't need to make any transfers, or very few, by game week 6. Then, you know, I think that game week 1, the bench boost, has the better chance of me being able to conserve my chips and kind of just continue quite a good streak from the off. It gives me the best chance of continuing the god tier of FPL, which I will never ever enter again. I think the last time I entered it was kind of 2014-15 in the Mahrez and Vardy season. But it could happen. But yeah, I just think the game one bench boost kind of just suit the team that you go with, suits the first 5 or 6 better. I honestly haven't looked that far beyond that, because I just, as I say, probably I think at the start of every year, things change so much. Like, what we think we know now, if we've had lots of time to think about it, just gets demolished. Like, fixture rotation, forget about it. Like, anybody who sits there like planning a rotation for defenses before game week 1, I think, is wasting their time. But so I think being conscious of that means that I'm sort of non-consciously looking towards just basically favouring that game with 1 bench boost. You were looking at game at 2 fairly strongly, weren't you? I mean, what swayed you towards 1?
Yeah, I think the longevity part was a big factor. because we're like a week and a half, 2 weeks out from the deadline today, and then whenever you're listening to it, it might be a bit less. Obviously things can change. I don't want to lock in on a strategy just yet, but the more I thought about it, the more that effectively playing a wild card and a bench boost in the same week just seems like a pretty great opportunity. Whereas bench boost 2, I think on paper the bench boost itself looks better. I prefer my chances of Coventry keeping a clean sheet against Hull than I do Ipswich against Sunderland, for instance. So I'm not expecting anything big or flashy from the bench boost itself. But like you say, it does feel like the team in the weeks around the bench boost is a bit better set up. And I'm not running into a huge problem by the time I get to game week 4. Like you mentioned all of them, Coventry as well. You're not going to want to start those players in game week 4, 5, 6. So I kind of just want to get them out of the way. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't know if by game week 4, if I'm forcing myself into it, I don't know if I'm going to feel confident enough as to what I'm wildcarding into. And I might accidentally over-index in a team like Chelsea, for instance, without too much information on how good they actually are, merely because they're playing Hull at home. And then it's like, well, I've got to take this opportunity, triple up on Chelsea, and go all guns blazing. But I might not have that sort of level of confidence by that point to say this is the right call for the long term. Whereas hopefully by game week 6, maybe longer, I will have just a little bit more confidence in my picks moving forwards. I suppose I was also looking at not even worrying about the bench boost until after I wildcard anyway. So maybe wildcard 6, bench boost 8 looks all right. But a great point that I think it was James on Planet, it usually is, but raised the other day was, I can't see a universe where if I am about to bench boost and I'm wildcarding into a bench boost, I'm ever going to pick David Raya, for instance, who is probably the best keeper to have long term. Like, are you realistically going to have a 6 million and a 4.5 million keeper on a wildcard to set up just for a 1 week bench boost? It seems like a lot. So I'd prefer to get the bench boost done, wildcard when I've got enough information, and then move it straight across to shifting all the funds into the 11. We can have 2 4 million defenders if we want. We can have a 4 million non-playing keeper probably, and really focus on that strongest possible 11. And then also, hopefully, because I've targeted the first 4 or 5 fixtures specifically, I won't need to make too many transfers in the first few, and then I can wildcard with 3 or 4 stored and then set myself up for the winter period that way, which last year was probably where I started stumbling because I didn't have that bank of transfers and I had bench boosted a bit later than most, and I had just a lot of money to like shift from my like bench into my 11, and that burnt transfers too. So yeah, game week 1, when it's effectively a wild card and we've got as much info as we can. Game week 2, so much can go wrong in game week 1 that even if I only bench boost with 13 or 14 players in game week 1, which would be a disaster, like injury after the deadline or in a warm up of the match or something, that's a disaster. But you can't do anything, and you're not burning a transfer on it. Whereas if that happens in game week 2 and you know the injuries are there, you might be tempted to take a hit. And then all of a sudden you're further behind and the bench boost is dictating quite a lot more than just the bench boost itself. So yeah, I think I do like bench boost 1. I also, the more I've looked at it, the more I actually quite like the blend of players on it as well, especially with DEFCON. I'm not even looking for clean sheets. I'm looking for who can pick up those 4 pointers. And like you said at the very start of the section, give me 12 points. I'll shake your hand and we can move on, never having to worry about it ever again. So yeah, more than happy with that.
Yeah, I agree. It's not, it's very low expectation. The bar is low for the start of the year. Maybe you can wildcard into the best bench boost ever. Maybe you found a particular time a bit later on in the season. But as you rightly point out, Sam, you basically end up then with a bit of a salvage op after that to get the money out of those players potentially. I mean, maybe you'll find a scenario where there's a 4.0 playing keeper, there's a 4.0 defender playing well, there's a cheap midfielder playing well that you're happy to kind of play for one game in the bet. But the reality is that the chances of that are quite low.
Yeah.
And I think it's best to be start of the year wild carding out of a bench boost, and then the second half of the year wild carding into a bench boost. I mean, that probably looks like the best way to do it, because around Christmas last year, it was mainly due to my own inability to control myself, which we'll speak about in a minute. That was the reason why I had few transfers, and I was definitely helped out by the fact that Thiago stayed by mistake, as we spoke about a lot last year. But if I'd have bench boosted then, I think that I'd have been in even more trouble, because I'd have had to allocate extra transfers not to maintenance but also to salvage, and that's not the best situation to be in. Just thinking a bit further on, free hit. Now, I sent this to you earlier. I actually don't mind the idea of free hit 4 as a possibility. I know that James on Planet spoke about this after I sent it to you. I listened to it, so luckily I did post that on Blue Sky before I heard the brilliant chip pod on the way home today. So thankfully it's kind of semi-original. But basically the idea is that it avoids the Manchester derby in 4, and it avoids kind of a few of my other players in my team situation as it stands having tricky fixtures. And there are 4 good fixtures in that week, which I think are actually a little bit, that's kind of rare to see, I suppose. So you've got Chelsea versus Hull, Liverpool versus Fulham, who I've mentioned a few times I think will struggle this year, Palace at home to Ipswich, which may actually be more even depending on how Sarge does at Palace, and Brighton are away at Coventry, similar caveats apply. But you can load up on pretty much those 4 fixtures. Maybe if you want to keep Haaland around, or you want to keep Bruno around, or you want to shove Calvert-Lewin in against Newcastle because you're a bit of a coward, fine, you can do that. But that looks like there are good fixtures to build your team around that week, and use that free hit, because that free hit, unless there is an unexpected blank, won't actually ever be used at a time which is quite template, which is quite good, I think. It may be that you might want to hold it back for if you've got a massive injury crisis, you've only got a couple of free transfers or whatever. But start of the year, I think it might be quite good to use it in 4, just because you can roll that transfer that you'd otherwise spend on Chelsea players, maybe 2 in fact. United players come back to Fulham, who I said I think are going to be strugglers this year, in 5. And then you can kind of you probably want to use a couple of transfers then on Newcastle versus Hull, assuming Hull are going to be toilet. But you can kind of save yourself from using your free transfers then. So I quite like that, actually, using it in 4. It's currently sort of plugged into my plan on FPL.team, but I'm open to persuasion on that one. Maybe there's some sort of golden game week that you found, Sam. But as it stands, I quite like that, even though it is quite early doors.
No, I mean, no golden game week for me, I'm afraid. The other one that I've spotted, which anyone can spot, is just look at when Arsenal play Man City and just think to yourself, well, it's quite likely that at that point I'll probably have a couple Arsenal, couple of Man City, maybe even 6 of them. And therefore, maybe free hitting that week might work out quite nicely. But aside from that, my general idea, if it wasn't going to be free hit 4, and that is, again, if I like the look of Chelsea, I like the fixtures you mentioned, by the way. I completely agree with everything you just said, basically. But aside from that, if my team feels like it can survive game week 4 without the need of a free hit, I'm pretty happy to just sort of leave it in my back pocket as a bit of a bonus chip at some point between 8 and 19, and just, it break glass in case of emergency. If I've got an injury crisis, if there's a little leak that Haaland doesn't start or something like that, and it just gives me that opportunity to go really different in a week where everything does feel quite template, or people are caught with a few less free transfers than they'd like in a bit of a crisis, then having the free hit in your back pocket for that is quite nice. And it's hard to quantify, because that kind of strategy where you are effectively winging the free hit is not something that you can say, oh, well, with this much certainty, there will be this game week where there's this many injuries and blah, 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 blah. You are just sort of hoping that there will be a week where it will all fall into your lap, and a free hit is really handy to have over the crowd. But that's a risk, obviously. I like free hit 4. Yeah, like I said, I agree with everything you said. I think it's game week 12, Arsenal play Man City, but someone will correct me on that if I'm wrong. Aside from that, yeah, I haven't. I suppose the other one I'd like to mention. Obviously, I've given my speech on O'Reilly playing the Community Shield, etc., etc. If Haaland doesn't, I could still be interested in a free hit 3 to have Haaland and co, but go without him in game week 1 and really bench boost from a position of strength with like a really stacked 15. That is on a very, very low likelihood that Haaland isn't going to be ready for game week 1. I expect him to be, but it's worth noting that some people are considering that. So yeah, maybe free hit 3 to get to triple Man City and like a really sexy triple Man City as well. But I think that's very low likelihood at time of recording.
Nice leads us on to triple captain, which I suspect will probably be on Haaland. My 3 triple captain game weeks are game week 3 or game week 7 or game week 16. Guess who he's playing in those weeks?
All at home to the promoted, all of them.
Coventry, Ipswich and Hull.
It's a shame Hull's the final one, because you want, like, shall we actually talk about that very quickly? Because otherwise it's quite a boring chip to discuss, because you do want to probably captain Haaland at home to a promoted club, but 3 feels very early. Like, I don't know about you, that just feels a bit early, and it's not the worst of the 3 teams either, but 16 feels quite late, and it is Christmassy period where maybe he's played a few minutes, he needs a rest, blah blah blah. But I think James mentioned again, Planet FPL, that there is the break around it of a week, so he should be fine. And if Haaland's not, then we're all going to want Marmoush or Semenyo, right? So we could, I guess, just triple captain them instead. But it feels just like too far away in the future. I wish those fixtures were reversed and I could just burn the chip in game week 3 against Hull at home. But Coventry, I don't know. Do you take for game week 3 or do you wait?
I think we'll have to see, basically. Because you've got the week off then after. That was kind of the smoking gun for me almost, because looking at it, obviously, that's kind of the weekend of the 19th for probably 20th, maybe the Monday, final kind of pre-Christmas Monday night football on 21st, and then the next game is Boxing Day, which falls on Saturday this year. It's I just can't see another game going in there. It just doesn't seem to ever be possible. I think it's going to be very, very low info for the Coventry game in 3. If Haaland starts the season off, and I know it's kind of just be 2 weeks, but I can't honestly sit here and say he scores 2 goals or 2 or 3 goals over the course of the first couple of game weeks. I can't honestly sit here and say, oh, you know what? It's the data's not quite there yet. We haven't got enough data yet. I'm going to wait for a bit longer. No, of course I'm going to be flipping triple captain in the game week.
Yeah,
if he started off well,
you take the opportunity when it presents itself immediately, don't you? Like, just go when it's hot. Yeah,
I feel like that's a flaw in the plan of the wild cards. Oh, sorry, the free hit in game week 3. That you'd be basically you'd be doing it to buy Haaland, who likely is, that's probably each of these weeks he's going to be a loss in the book, isn't he, in terms of triple captain, because I suspect that people are going to choose their poison for each of them. But that early in the season as well, to be using a chip to buy a player that many are going to be using a weaker chip in triple captain to put the armbands 3 times on a player, I'm not sure about that.
Well, I suppose like the alternative is like a Bruno, but I think mainly he's playing away against the promoters in the first. Well, I mean, game week 1 against Hull would be the other one that I'd really like, but that feels way too soon, and away and like just no. Ipswich at home, fine, but again, game week 2 is very early. and Ipswich aren't meant to be the worst of those 3 promoted clubs. And again, if you've got Haaland the following week against Coventry at home, why are you like, I don't know. I think it just is Haaland, and it's just pick which of those 3 you prefer. But if he gets off to a hot start and the crowd are going there, I'll probably go there as well. Partly just so I'm not massively exposed, but also because Haaland does tend to get off to a really hot start most years, and striking whilst the iron's hot is quite important in FPL. And you just don't know if by game week 16 he's going to be injured. He could just be out at that point. And you want to take the guarantee of, yeah, well, there's no Champions League to worry about. He's fit, he's fresh, he's firing. Go game week 3 at that point. But yeah, I'd quite like to wait until 16, because having that in your back pocket, knowing that the whole game's coming, if he's fit for that, that could be brilliant. But it's a long way in the future. Coventry at home for game week 14, Bruno, by the way. Well said in the chat. I didn't realise what game week that was.
Yeah, but if you wait that long, you might as well be, obviously, depending on what happened by then, you probably be like, well, Haaland's got a hole in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. What happens, though, if you get to 16 and he gets injured for the whole game? And then yeah, it's probably going to have to be, isn't it? I think there's 1 or 2 other slight opportunities. Is it Arsenal play? I'm really testing myself here. Is it Ipswich at home in like 18 or something that they might have? So there's possibly 19.
You lose it then, don't you?
1 to 19, I think you've got it, don't you?
Is it 1 to 19? Oh, yeah.
I think so.
That's the last chance saloon. Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, and then you're really out of luck if Saka goes down injured as well.
Well, hang on, they're playing Ipswich, aren't they? Who captains triple captains?
Oh, don't no. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I can't remember who that was.
The redemption is going to be great.
Yeah.
Don't let me do it.
Yeah. All right. So, few things there in mind. But yeah, bench boost 1 predominantly seems to be the biggest thing. Let's hop over then to the more sort of esoteric part of this, which is the 6 simple rules for not having a great season. We can't guarantee that, but having a not rubbish season is how we've modestly termed this. I think your first year, maybe your second, we did like a 10 mistakes to avoid, and this is kind of boiling that down. So we definitely did cover these to some extent, but also found ourselves repeating what we were saying, and we may do that here, but I think we found the way to kind of condense some information that we've gleaned over our time as fantasy football managers that can hopefully assist you. He said it in a way which is going to be helpful. So yeah, the 6 are hopefully ones which are kind of quite broad brushstroke, but nonetheless something which is going to speak to you in some way, shape, or form. First one, Sam kind of gave this phrase a couple of times. Strong opinions loosely held is the name of the game. I think that's there's no sort of like order of preference here, by the way. But yeah, strong opinions loosely held, Sam. Yeah, good friend of ours. Long may he continue, but not in the FPL sphere. Neil Murray was the first person who said this. It's a bit of a throwback for those who remember. Yeah,
playmaker. Yeah, I it's something that I like in my just real life as well. Like I'm quite opinionated. We all are. We have fantasy football opinions that are quite well set, but information, especially in this game, changes so quickly. And I think you always do need to be open to external influences, different new narratives, new data. You've got to be open to changing your mind. I will never have a problem with like just a nice, open, polite debate about a player and being convinced that I'm wrong. And then, okay, I've got a strong opinion. I will lay out my argument, but then being willing to accept that actually, I've read that one incorrectly, or let's remove the argument side of it and just look at game week to game week. At the start of the season, we've got strong opinions on who will or won't be great picks. By game week 5 or 6, because there are so many new managers, because there are new players to the league, because there'll be new systems and just general trends come and go in FPL as they do in the Premier League. If you are too fixated upon certain like long held beliefs, I think you're going to become outdated quite quickly and fall behind the pack. So it's not that you just have to abandon everything you think constantly, but always stress test your opinions. Like, is what I actually think still technically true, or is there evidence to suggest that that might have moved on, changed in some way, or that I'm just outright wrong? And being open to embracing that information and that maybe alternative belief system in some cases, just as a bit of a sense check more than anything else. And I think that will leave you in stand you in good stead moving forwards in FPL across a 38 game week season where, let's face it, a lot can change.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that. And I think just building it very slightly, it's just so important not to fall prey to sunk cost fallacy or gambler's fallacy in FPL. Like, I've done this so many times, especially on WGTA in the early days, where I felt like, for example, I had to follow through with something I said on the Monday, as it was back then, on the pod when it came to on Friday. I was making my kind of transfer move just because I
Yeah.
invested capital in advocating for a certain course of action. And the more you kind of put time, effort into thinking about a certain way of thinking, a certain sort of plan continuation bias. I've got a picture of Ross in my head talking about this quite a lot from one of the pods we did a few years ago. Like, it's just so important to just kind of, as you say, stress test these things continuously, because like a good point of a good case in point of kind of how fickle we should unashamedly be is Calvert-Lewin, as I said earlier on. Like, a year ago, cynics would be butting you underground if you said you were interested in going with him, whereas this year, not a word. And it's just so true, echoing what you said during the season as well. Like, we'll always be open. You should always be open to reappraising your opinions on players, teams, and strategies. Apart from Evan Nilsson, something should certainly shift in FPL. Something will certainly shift in FPL to explode the current consensus. And maybe, just maybe, if you spot it early, you can gain a modicum of an edge. And those edges are so hard to find now in FPL that following this idea of strong opinions loosely held stands you in really good stead for being quite flexible when a lot of the crowd perhaps won't be.
Yeah. Stubbornness can really end up being quite disastrous at times. The other thing that we should probably say as we move across to point 2 is what we're suggesting with point 1 isn't necessarily like constantly change everything all the time. It's be open to the idea that new information might cause you to want to change it, and not just to be stubborn and hold on to beliefs even if there is evidence to suggest otherwise, which I think brings us on fairly nicely to point number 2, which is at times doing nothing is actually a good thing. Now, I walked through the first one. Tom, do you want to walk through this one to begin with?
Yeah, I suppose this is the idea of favouring the long game effectively. Especially now we have transfers roll up to 5. The value calculus is strongly weighted in favour of getting that active free transfer. If you've got a serviceable team for the week in front of you, we'll come on to this again on point 4, but sometimes it is best just to do nothing. There's a lot of power in doing nothing compared to acting, and this feeds a lot into the idea of action bias, the idea that you sometimes feel like you have to do something to change your situation. Actually, a lot of the time, biding your time, getting more information, and then making a more sort of informed decision is a better thing to do than acting even though you feel like you should. It's a really old piece of advice from my very first season of WGTA, actually. That year, to take you back, if you're on some listener, you remember this. I started really well. I was on course for an easy sort of top 100k finish. I had an injury some point around sort of October, and I had all these sort of linking to point 1, this grand plan of the transfers I was going to make, and I was thinking of doing this, doing that, and a big part of it was selling Salah to buy Kane. and Salah had a favourable fixture against Bournemouth coming up. Kane had, I think, a more difficult fixture, and I thought, you know what? Okay, this transfer is a good. This injury is a good sort of excuse for me to sort of move everything on. I didn't need to, but I did. And a hat trick for Salah, massively owned, massive red arrow. Absolutely no coming back from it that season, even though it was so early. I think I got a 300k finish, but I think my rank went from like 100k to like maybe like 900k in one go, and it was a huge lesson on doing nothing. Did I heed it over the following years? No, but am I listening to that now? Yeah, I am a lot more, I think. I think I went through last year with 2 hits, didn't I? So I am learning slowly, but I think this year with the level pricing structure, the lower barriers too, and therefore better accessibility to move assets around, I think that can make action very tempting, which is why I think it's good to bear this one in mind, because you can I'm sure I will follow this during the year, Sam, but it's just something to bear in mind that actually sometimes doing nothing and gathering information and biding your time is probably a good idea.
Yeah, it's action bias is exactly it. You don't want to be making moves with less than 100% certainty all too often. And quite often in FPL, we can get carried away with seeing that we've got a transfer or two spare. And okay, maybe there's a player in your team, maybe 2 or 3, that you're just not quite loving the look of. And oh, look over there, you've got a team with a 6 million midfielder who's playing Hull at home, and everyone seems to be buying them, and the crowd are going, and the ownership's going to be really big. But aside from that one fixture, there's not really that much going on for them. Well, maybe just batten down the hatches, ignore it for a week, knowing that your team is actually in pretty good shape for the longer term will serve you better than making the move. And I think what we tend to remember is that I think it's the availability heuristic you were talking about earlier, is the times where you've made the move and it's been a success. Whereas in recent seasons, what I've tried to do, probably because it's mainly been failures, but I've tried to really also remember in balance the times where I've acted and it's been a failure, and especially try to jot down or remind myself what the reasons were for making the action in the first place. One that always comes to mind for me is Hwang Hee-chan at Wolves a couple of years ago. Who were they playing? I can't even remember.
Were they playing you? Was
It might have been. Maybe it was. I don't think it was us. But yeah, it was a bad team akin to Southampton either way. And and basically we all went for Wolves midfielders, and it was effectively for that 1 week. And yeah, it didn't pay off whatsoever. Set most of us back to a transfer or two, one to bring him in, one to get rid of him again at some point later on down the line. Yeah, just wasn't worth it. And sometimes I think what I want to try to reframe doing nothing as is that is an action in itself. Doing 0 transfers, I'm going to try and picture in my mind as that is one of the choices I've got, and I'm picking that door rather than the 1 transfer door or the wildcard door or whatever. Picking the 0 transfer door is an action, but it's an action to decide, yeah, I like my team as it is enough that a transfer down the line is going to be more valuable to me than using one today. So yeah, it's avoiding that action bias, but also maybe reframing it as doing nothing is in itself an action, and your lack of control over FPL might mean that doing nothing is the most control you could possibly wield. I would maybe contest. So yeah, without going around in circles, doing nothing can be sometimes quite good.
Oh, it's just that it's like that feeling of being passive when things are going wrong. Like it is so difficult, and there is no world in which we're saying we're not going to fall prey to these. But hopefully by raising it with you, you're all going to remember this at some point. Hopefully Sam's dulcet tones will be ringing in your ears, and you'll be like, oh, actually at the start of the year that guy with a really good voice said maybe it's not the best thing to be doing to make a move. Okay, maybe I won't this time. There are often dividends that come out of doing nothing, but I completely acknowledge that it's in the cut and thrust of FPL, once things actually start, it's hard to not make an action on impulse. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah,
Moving
especially
on to
like a
number three.
rage transfer as well.
Oh,
At the
no,
start of a game week. Yeah, like
we
we've all done it. Yeah,
we don't do it
it's
as
very
often though, do
difficult.
we now? No,
What's that? Sorry,
we don't do it as often now, do we?
not as
I
often.
think
No.
I think it's kind of something that, there are mistakes which are made by those guys in your mini league a lot. You can look at a team, look at something they've done with their transfers and so on and so forth. And I think that you reach a certain point, and I'll come on to this number 6, of competence with FPL, or subjective confidence with FPL, where you kind of know if somebody knows FPL, and I think
Mm,
that stuff like raised transfers and taking lots of hits, I struggle to think that many people who are engaged with FPL will make those, and I suppose people who are wanting to get better at FPL, which is hopefully what we're trying to help assist you with, yeah, I hope you'll fall into that bracket. Another thing that probably might help you out a little bit, especially in this oversaturated age, is number 3. Beige, obvious picks are often the best ones. Like you've all seen the chat, I'm sure. Content creators, rah rah rah. Algos, rah rah rah. Why are they suggesting this? Why are they thinking that? It's all collusion. It's all the cartel. All of that rubbish. The reality is, despite FPL opening up the menu of possibilities to more players due to DEFCON, we still only actually have a finite number of realistic routes at every juncture of the season from beginning to end. Sure, you can head off the beaten track, and I said myself, like kind of last year during the chip strategy in the second half of the season, that I felt a little bit sort of uninspired by how template my team was compared to all the engaged managers that I saw around me. But obviously, scoring those points, getting to the final rank that I did, that was satisfying. Now I'll come back to that
mm.
number 6. But if you want to head off the beaten track, sure, more power to you. But actually, the game can be, and it often is, quite simplified, and it can be condensed down to a few options, which are often painted as beige or kind of a bit obvious. The reality is that they're often also the best options, and getting riled up about that, becoming anti something and doing that particular dance, actually hurts you more than it hurts everybody else. And I've done that. I've kind of seen that, this player I've denigrated as kind of an algo pick or a bit of a fad, and they've ended up doing well in the past. And it isn't always necessarily the case. We'll come on to that at number 4. But I think sometimes people do need to go back to basics when they're about to jump on an anti bandwagon against something or other. Actually, sometimes things look quite straightforward because they are,
Yeah.
and that can sometimes be all there is to it, be it a pick or be it a particular sort of chip strategy or something like that. And it's worth remembering that in the noughties we had beige living rooms for a reason. It was fashionable. Bring back beige, bring back hope. That's what I say.
Some of the best foods in the world are fairly beige. Pasta, pizza at times, bread. Yeah, it's all great.
Could you be any more
And
British right now?
I know potato. Anyway, carbs basically. Yeah, look, beige obvious picks are often the best ones, and the reason they feel beige is because we all know what makes a good FPL pick. Like there's almost a checklist. Like, do they get good minutes first and foremost? Yes. Do they have reasonable attacking data? Yes. Do they have set pieces? Yes. Penalties? Yes. Well, you know what? Guess what? They're going to be a very good FPL pick if they've got all of those things. And it's going to get boring really quickly talking about them because everyone will agree. So Bruno Fernandes now is like basically ticks pretty much all of those boxes, maybe not all of them for everyone. Haaland as well. Like they're template and they're beige because they're good enough that everyone generally agrees that they should be in for most people. Now, not everyone will have them. And what is very, very important to do is to challenge and stress test why they're beige. Like, are they actually good picks? And not only just stress testing them, but also being open to that answer being, yes, they are good picks. Not just, I'm going to stress test it until I find any reason I can figure out or any excuse to call them a bad pick, because sometimes you can end up fixating on something that doesn't even matter about them and saying, look, that's the reason they're a bad pick. But actually, all of those good reasons still exist. So, Gross. The one I keep coming back to is Gross this season. He's going to end up being called beige. I can feel it. He's a bit boring. He doesn't have the best underlying attacking data, but he's got pretty much everything else. And you can just see it happening that he's going to be called beige. And yeah, he is a bit, but he's beige because he ticks off a lot of those boxes and at a really cheap price, to the point where everyone kind of just agrees that it's just a staple part of your FPL diet, like bread, like pasta. So yeah, you got to have some carbs.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'd also raise Elliot Anderson last year at the start of the season.
Yeah, 100%.
Who's laughing now? I don't think anybody's looking at it and thinking, oh, he was a bad pick. The guy came in with a ridiculous points total at a ridiculously low price. In some ways, maybe it may have been worth suspending the disbelief surrounding that particular player, and bearing in mind that I didn't own him once all year, frankly, and he did bits for you. And I wish that I did at the start of the year just thought, you know what, this guy's what, 5.5 was he last year?
Yeah,
At that price and with the potential that was there, it was worth a bang. And I wish I'd done that. I had Declan Rice in my squad pretty much until the last week of preseason, right? And it, I look back on it. I think I said to you kind of around Christmas time. I look back on that and think that I was kind of scared off it almost by how straight back that looked.
yeah.
The reality was that I shouldn't have done that, and maybe that kind of moves on to number 4 a little bit as well, which is question narrative. So yeah, I mean, I think this is one, Sam, which is quite pervasive for us to be speaking about as content creators. I hate that term. Muted across all social media, but I mean, it's definitely quite a personal one for us, isn't it? Too?
Yeah, it's difficult because I mean, let's face it, we're not some of the bigger content creators, luckily, but we are part of the narrative, I suppose, to some extent. So it is quite difficult to challenge the narrative because you are part of the people putting together the narrative. But also, I would also suggest that anyone who is posting in the comments or posting on X or Blue Sky, it all builds into a narrative. We are like all part of the FPL community sphere that over time things just do start to build up a bit of a head of steam. There's a bit of a snowball effect. There's herd mentality comes in across platforms. Narratives can very quickly form and then run away from you without anyone really knowing where it even originated from, and then it just gets labeled as like, oh, it's content creator mush or whatever it is, AI slop. But it is, and I feel like I've said this to every point almost, but be challenging. Always look at why it's being or being a part of the narrative. Is it for good reason, or are there errors in the judgment and the logic? A bit like, do you want to do anything this week or not? Well, question it. Does it actually make sense to do something? And then beige obvious picks again. It all feeds into a narrative. Like calling a pick beige is a narrative. Doing something and taking an action is in its own way a narrative. So I think this is more be inquisitive as to why the community or why the trends are forming in FPL. And sometimes they're forming for very good reason. So there are two answers to the question. Is it a narrative for a good reason or a bad reason? And sometimes it is for good reason. And it's important not to forget that. But sometimes also a bandwagon can form and it's just wrong, or it's formed off of a bias that is just sort of commonly held across the community, like DCL is awful and we all hate him. and it took quite a long time to get to the point where we all sort of accepted him again. Who would that pick be this season? I don't even know. Like Isak, maybe. Like he just can't stay fit. Well, if he's fit for the first 5 game weeks and plays 90 in all of them, then maybe that narrative needs to be questioned, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, content creators are selling you Lember spread to keep you going on your long journey. Take the Lember spread. That is the way it is. But on this, there is always a weekly churn of content. There will always be people, and we do it ourselves in Form versus Fixtures, who promote players as good for the week ahead or the next few weeks, and there are always questions being asked. But it's important if you're an engaged manager, thinking back to the ethos of who got the assist, really, to question that for yourself, and more than anything, make the narrative tropes applicable to where you are as well in the overall ranks, your approach to manager, how it fits into how you set up and how you sort of approach fantasy football. I mean, it kind of comes to mind, and I'm not digging anyone out here particularly, but I cannot tell you the number of times last season that I saw people kind of continuing to play as if they were doing well and buying into the weekly sort of picks when they were quite a low rank, and maybe it would have been better for them to be more aggressive when they were well behind. Like even over the last sort of 10, 12 weeks, taking a couple of risks may have gotten them back up the ranks. Obviously it comes down to how you play and what makes things comfortable for you, which we'll come back to in 6. But I think it's really important at times to question what is out there as kind of the hot topic of the week, and apply it to whether you really need to think about it. Like, you can have a player in midfield who's doing well for you, and they're coming into tough fixtures, but you kind of back them for whatever reasons to do well over those tough fixtures. People are all kind of looking to the next big thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. In effective ownership, but it might be that you back that player to keep delivering them. There's no reason why that I'd be selling that player. Actually, sometimes following your own instincts on a player like that may be better, and questioning the narrative and thinking, actually, that's not for me, could pay dividends. And again, it's one of those kind of small examples of where there is still an edge in FPL. And take us on to number 5, Sam. I've put this quite provocatively. Effective ownership is everything in FPL. Nakedly, boldly, it is a fundamental mechanism for how the game works. But that's kind of not the whole story. Effective ownership is everything, but it kind of isn't too, right?
Yeah, it depends what you define as everything. It is the reason the game works, really, because effective ownership is who you're going up against. Your 12, i.e. 11 plus captain, versus everyone else's 12, and the effective part is, well, we're going to look at all of the other 12 million players and what are the average ownerships across that database. That's all it is. But the fact that that's now been quantified and you can actually find that number on like live FPL, for instance, every single week, does lead to a slight obsession about ownership and how punishing a player could be, how scared I should be of a captain or a player getting transferred in, like we've just talked about in many of the previous rules. It also goes the other way, though. It's opportunity if you want it to be. It doesn't have to be a chain that you're kind of held back by. It can also be a weapon to go against that ownership, and it's everything, but not in the sense that it needs to be listened to and maybe fundamental to all of your decisions. You don't always have to buy someone who is also going up in effective ownership. It can work in the contrarian way, where, you know what, he's being bought by a load of managers. I don't back him as much as everyone else. I'm going to leave it. And that, and again, in itself is an action, just doing nothing with that player and avoiding the effective ownership that week and fighting against it. Or if you're chasing towards the end of the season, like you mentioned, a little bit more aggressive, and you do search out players that are being overlooked, that do have lower effective ownership, knowing that, okay, if the high effective ownership players don't do so well, my guys have enough firepower to boost me up the ranks. So it is everything, but not in the classical sense that you need to follow it and use it as a guide to picking every single player. Almost use it in the opposite way sometimes.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's the battleground of aggressive and defensive play. It's also home to one of the biggest edges left to us as FPL managers, the forgotten asset. By this I mean assets in past seasons. For some reason, that Almiron comes to mind from a few years ago, who are in a lot of teams, and managers were basically holding on because they've had their hot streak, they've got value accrued in them, they've got a high ownership, but that hot streak has come to an end. And it's almost like that pick becomes sort of wallpaper to some. And these players, which are still held by many, but no longer performing in your judgment, form a great chance to find an edge in the template by being an early adopter to an alternative before they inevitably become probably high owned. And there are lots of ways to exploit effective ownership, which is what's really important. And yeah, the sword and shield thing, from many years ago, I think Fantasy Football Scout Jonty was the person who pioneered that. He's now called Joe. I think that's kind of the really important way of looking at it. Like, sometimes is the time to be defensive, right? So Gameweek 1, there are a few considerations that me, in the way that I play, and we'll talk about this in a minute, I'm not going to be going against. So I'm probably not going to be going against owning Haaland. I just won't countenance it, I don't think. I probably won't go against owning Bruno because he's over kind of 50% owned or whatever. Same with João Pedro. And then, as I mentioned on the pods yesterday, on Tuesday, Szoboszlai as well, because his ownership's so high, I don't want to take that risk. It may be that other people do want to take that risk, and you know, they are exposed to Szoboszlai, but they've also got greater latitude to make gains because they've invested in another player, be that a Wirtz, be that a Foden, to use our AX or AY thing. And there are lots of ways to play that. Like, it is just the way that ranks work in FPL, and it's important to understand it. And the other thing that I'd add is that the window for you to have the edge when it comes to effective ownership is smaller than ever before. I remember a few years ago, you had the Irish lad at Wolves, Matt Doherty, and there were probably about 4 or 5 weeks where he returned a fair bit. I'm probably over egging that, to be honest. He probably maybe returned twice in 5 weeks, but because he was a left back in ridiculous positions, he was like such an obvious pick at 4.4 or 4.5 at the time. And you had that because there wasn't an oversaturation of content. You had that kind of like lovely little asset with a lot of kind of ceiling that was in your team as an FPL nerd that you could kind of profit from. Now I think people are going to be informed about a particular player who has emerged, who's kind of cheap or maybe sort of on the fringes of the discussion, and they are so quickly highly owned. It's untrue now. You've probably got about a week, 2 at max, and suddenly they become wallpaper very quickly. And these players, I think, do provide continuing windows of potential opportunity if you elect to take them on, if other people aren't kind of as on it in terms of thinking about, okay, is it still worth holding this player? Is there still value in this player? If you are questioning the narrative and thinking, well, actually, maybe this player was good for a few weeks, but now kind of the time's gone, it's time to move him on. Being kind of at the head, or rather than at the tail, is probably one of the biggest sort of battlegrounds for gains that we've got now. And I think that's kind of continuingly so important. It all comes back to effective ownership and understanding that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with your point on how quickly these markets now move in FPL, especially at the start of a season with so much content out there, you can't really have a differential that's successful for any more than a week or two now. So I'd almost like reframe it in this modern era and say what you might want to do is see, in the past you might have listened to your favorite content creator, whoever it is, and been like, oh yeah, that's a really nice differential, I'm going to jump on that. Now you almost want to listen to what the markets are saying and what the content creators are saying and say, do I challenge that? Like it's obvious that that player is going to end up getting owned or captained quite heavily in the next couple of weeks because they're being plugged quite a lot. But if I challenge that narrative, if I think that there's an opportunity to go against that, who's no one looking at that I back just as much as them? Because then you can use effective ownership as a sword rather than a shield. You're not just going with the crowd knowing that, oh, I'm really scared of one player going up in ownership. They might be a really good one, but maybe there's an alternative that isn't getting talked about because the narrative has just been overwhelmed by this one other player. Then there's always an option B, and again, sometimes option C, D, and E, a few of them might just be do nothing, and the players you've got already are perfectly viable. And maybe it's that transfer further down the line is more useful than just following that really fast moving market towards the next hot topic. So yeah, still look at what those are and who the differentials are, but under the knowledge that that probably won't be a differential for much longer. And therefore, is there opportunity? Is it sustainable? If not, why am I going there? Let's look elsewhere and look for the next thing that no one is yet talking about.
Yes, absolutely. I think that kind of links to the last one. Make it fun for you.
Yeah. Still
Very
searching for that.
important, isn't it? Yeah, still searching for it. Look, FPL is bloody frustrating. It is a game which we all keep coming back to because we're probably addicts or it's in our blood. We've got the bug, whatever. But I think it's really important to be able to square it with yourself to squeeze as much fun as you can out of this game. Like, you know, you can take it seriously, you can have detached sort of sense of amusement to it, which I try to. You probably can't keep playing if it's making you feel sad, but nonetheless, trying to make it, find the fun in it is really important. I mean, obviously getting good ranks is fun, but ultimately it has to kind of fit what you're looking for in playing FPL. Like, you don't actually do very much. I think we figured out the other week, the other
Yeah.
year, that you don't actually have that many decisions every year. But week to week, you've got probably 2, 3, captaincy, 4 captaincy, bench order, chip, and then transfer. But I mean, it's not that many. There's actually not that much to do, but it can oddly be all encompassing. And my partner has no idea what the hell I'm thinking about a lot of the time or why I'm so kind of engrossed in it. But hey, whatever. Making it fun for you is so important. So, for example, for me, I'm not using algorithms this year. Like, I'm not making a thing of it. I'm mentioning it here, and I'll dot it around. But there's going to be no posts, no blogs, nothing like it, making it a big deal, a big sort of hill I'm dying on. It's not me being a luddite and willfully misunderstanding what algorithms and solvers are. It's not me denigrating those who use them thoughtfully. It's not me saying that these people are all cheating. But it is me saying that I'm surrounded by analytics and AI and use it all the time in my professional life. And I actually have found that I have more fun in FPL if I don't use that. And I'd like to think I don't need it too. I'm an experienced FPL manager, can probably guess to a large extent, for example, what FPL review recommends to start a season. But that's by the by. Like, basically what I'm saying is that I found that the fun satisfaction of FPL is me doing it myself mostly. I don't care if other people find fun in changing its minutes on Solio or something, and making lots of different sort of this and that. That's their prerogative. I don't care. But for me, doing my own work is what makes it fun and rewarding, and that's personally what I'll be doing this year. And by the way, I'm sure a lot of players that we pick out are going to be kind of overlapping with solver picks or more talked about ones out there in the community. See rolls 3 or 4, but that's just me. Like I think that I think this one's actually it sounds really kind of sappy, hammy, and quite sort of saccharine. But for me, I think this is really important because it's a long commitment. If you're doing the whole season, it's a long old commitment to go from early August all the way until May. And you've got to find the fun in it to keep you going, and beyond just kind of like, oh well, game week, game week, game week. There's a reason people fall off. It's just not fun anymore, and you've got to find the fun in it somewhere, somehow, and trying to. And I can't tell you what that is. It's got to be from you, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I probably don't have much to add on the making it fun bit specifically, but I would also add to this making it sustainable for you as well, and accepting, obviously, the fun side of it. We want fun, we want points, and we want to watch football and enjoy football more because we've got FPL picks in that game, and that obviously is something I really care about. But if you're listening to this pod, I assume, especially an hour and a half in, I assume that you're pretty into FPL, probably on a par with Tom and I, and sometimes it can be very, very frustrating. I think a part of the stamina that we need to win at FPL and to actually enjoy the game year on year is around finding good guardrails between your FPL world and real life, and also accepting the lack of control that we have over the actual outcomes. The decisions are, for me, and from what you've just said as well, the fun part. They're like actually thinking it all through, planning and trying to come up with some combination and strategy over several game weeks, even over a 38 game week season, that will end up with a good rank, is the fun of FPL. What you can't control is what the 11 players in any given team going out onto the pitch do in any given week. We don't know whether someone's going to go off injured after 2 minutes or score a hat trick. We can't actually control any of that. So the second that deadline locks, trying to kind of wipe your hands of it, say, right, whatever will be, I'll deal with the fallout of whatever happens, is quite a healthy thing to be able to do. It's also something that I have not mastered. So it's something that I think I would like to get even better at, and not getting consistently frustrated at every little thing that happens in a game week, but knowing that it is out of your control as soon as you have locked in those decisions for the week. And the outcome isn't necessarily equal to the quality of your decision. You can only make the decision on the information you had at the time. The outcome has given you more information that you didn't have and you had no way of knowing. So don't beat yourself up about it. If your game week's gone badly, okay, maybe there are mistakes that you can learn from, but don't base it on the outcome. Base it on the quality of the decision that you made without the knowledge of what the outcome would be. And I think that doesn't necessarily make it more fun for you, but in a way, it kind of does, because it makes it more sustainable for you. And if we're playing the game for longer, we get more goals, we get more assists, and we get more points. So that's my final thing to say on the final point.
Yeah, my final thing is always, it's not so much was the decision right or wrong, it's more, were you happy with the decision you made? I think that's the thing that you need to hold on to a lot of the time in FPL. Right. Well, I think that given the time, we should probably end it there, Sam. But I mean, we've got 2 shows out for the next couple of weeks. Hope people can burn through these and enjoy it. And yeah, Talisman Theory's coming late next week, I think, whenever I get signal, basically, where I'm on holiday. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But I'll do my very best to get we'll get out. I'll post it on Blue Sky, Reddit, and lots on the X as well.
Well, I have had a sneak peek at it, and I can tell you it is well worth the wait. Everyone will enjoy it greatly, I'm sure. So I'm excited for the world to experience it, not just me. But yeah, well done again, and I'm sure you'll get your flowers once it goes out. But yeah, thank you all so much, as always, for listening and for watching. And thanks again, especially if you're new, or of course if you're returning for season number 10 of WGTA. We really appreciate, and we also hope that you'll be on board for the remainder of the season ahead. we were Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at Who Got the Assist, all written out. FPL Pricey on there for me. X is WGTA_FPL. Again, it's FPL Pricey there. On YouTube, it's Who Got the Assist, all written out, and FPL Pricey on there for me as well. And then if you did enjoy the pod, please do consider following us on those social channels. Give the pod a 5-star rating if you're listening. And of course, if you're on YouTube, leave a like, hit subscribe. It all really helps us out. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks everybody. All listeners, new and old, somewhere in between. Always great fun, and viewers, of course. Back on Tuesday the 18th, I'm afraid, off on holiday for a week with no internet as mentioned. But I'll publish that very next Tuesday at some point. Hope we assist you think about your drafts and some rules to FPL this year. See you next Tuesday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?